Have you ever had a nightmare with a long, dark hallway involved? If you have, chances are you're infantry, or just like an infantryman just trying to survive. But all jokes aside, the fatal funnel is a rare but still happens tactical situation that everyone from war fighters to warrant servers need to be aware of and able to identify. Because as its name implies, failure to do so could incur casualties, to put it casually. The fatal funnel is created when you have only one way in and one way out of an area, and they're the same way. Secondly, the way into that area is constrained to any side-to-side or flanking movement. What this does is force what's usually an offensive force to engage defensive forces on a one-by-one basis, and this only further reinforces the fatal and fatal funnel. In infantry or small unit situations, the best advice I could give you is find any possibility of bypassing that funnel. The only way you're guaranteed taking it is with overwhelming volume of firepower, and your squad better be wearing their body armor because hits will be traded during the breakthrough, despite all your best attempts at suppression. Disposables such as grenades are genuinely priceless, as their wide area effect nature can force the enemy to relinquish the disputed property long enough because they had to run 30 meters and 2 rooms away to guarantee their own safety as their effective use of the disposables is an area denial method. The best example of the fatal funnel historically is the Battle of Thermopylae. If you've ever heard of a little-known Russell Crowe movie called 300, that was an over-dramatized account of the real Battle of Thermopylae, which is also referred to as Battle of the Valley of Fire, because Thermopylae actually translates to fire, and the battle took place in a really wickedly tight mountain valley pass and coastal shore. So sometime around July of 480 BC, the Persian Empire was looking to expand. They started with a naval campaign to try to dominate the trade routes of the Mediterranean. Then they were going to land directly on the east coast of Greece and would start plowing westward. Fortunately, somebody in Spartaland was a serious Sun-tzu fan, because what happened next was definitely textbook Sun-tzu. Through the gathering of intelligence from multiple sources, most notably spies, merchants, and fishermen, while the Arabs were amassing forces, the Greeks were making plans. Just before leaving, Xerxes sends emissaries to Greece, demanding a tax of land and water. The emissaries were tried and executed, but the Spartans being Spartans, they took the emissaries they got, threw them down into a well, and permanently sealed the well shut. Sparta then sent 2 people back, these 2 people knowing they probably weren't coming back, and their goal was simple, just to tell Xerxes personally where he could stick his tax. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the Athenian general Themistocles proposes a hammer and anvil strategy, by the Greek army taking a waiting position on the shores of the east coast, and the Greek navy blocking the Strait of Artemisia. The hope was to directly counter the invasion by simply counterattacking from the opposite direction, which would rob the deployed infantry of support from the naval forces, as they already have their hands full. Now, timing is everything, and for the Greeks, this was a bad time of year. The first problem was called Carneia. It was some sort of supposed holy festival that even Spartans were forbidden to fight during. Yeah, I don't get it either. So the king of Sparta, Leonidas I, let's be real, you want something done, you get a Spartan on it. Decided to break ranks with tradition and put out a call for any warriors willing to skip the festivities to go and intercept the invading Arab Empire. His whole royal bodyguard detachment, called the, I hope I'm getting this right, the hippies? It kind of looks like hippies. But anyway, they signed up. He did something weird though. Before leaving, he consulted some absolute that guano crazy shit called the Oracle of Delphi. That sounds like the name of a really cool automotive diagnostics scan tool. Anyway, she spit out some just complete utter schizo nonsense that took me like 10 minutes to decipher. And it roughly translates to the following. Okay, Spartans. Either your great capital city must be sacked by Perseus' son. If not, you'll lose the king of the house of Heracles. You won't be stopped till one of those two things happen. Now, truth be told, historically she was just another Miscaleo. It did not go down that way. And because we decided to talk to Batguano Girl, Leonidas ends up with only 300 soldiers to take initially. That's where they got the movie's title from. Fortunately, he did receive some reinforcements en route to Thermopylae, and by the time he arrived, he collected a fighting force of around 7,000 people strong. But this was a mere fraction compared to the size of the force sent by Xerxes. There's conflicting information and a lot of speculation here, but archaeologists of all disciplines have finally come to the agreement that Arab forces numbered somewhere between 120 to a maximum of 300,000 strong. So in mid to late August, the Arab fleet makes it into the Malian Gulf, which are the waters directly outside of Thermopylae. The locals request a meeting of the Joint Chiefs. A local group called the Peloponnesians asked for a last-minute strategy change. They want everyone to pull back to a spot called the Isthmus of Corinth. But this was really just self-serving to block the Arabs from getting into Peloponnese. Leonidas stuck to his guns and his original plan, adding the deployment of some Phocians and Locrians to all nearby major cities to try to call and rally up more reinforcements. Hopefully with Xerxes' forces firmly on Greek soil, any traditionalists that didn't answer the call to arms due to whatever party they were at that day might just sober up and show up. So Xerxes sends an ambassador to Leonidas to give them an option. He can reasonably let Xerxes pass and reward him, or not. If Leonidas was willing to simply let him by, not even helping later, Xerxes promised that Leonidas and all those men present would be free to go anywhere. Would also be given a document saying they were a friend of the Persian Empire, which would give them accommodations and safe passage anywhere through the Middle East. And lastly, everyone could get to pick one new plot of land in Greece to call their own. I gotta admit, my mercenary instinct says that's a hell of a deal. See it compelling? Anyways, this is where another famous line got born. During the negotiations, a random soldier complained to Leonidas. Quote, because of the barbarians and their arrows being so numerous, we won't be able to see the sun. End quote. To which Leonidas replied, then won't it be nice to fight in the shade? What a Chad. After a few more days of just saying no, the ambassador returned the last time holding a handwritten note direct from Xerxes. It just said, hand over your arms. Leonidas instructed the ambassador to return directly to Xerxes and say one thing. Malone Labe, which directly translates to come and get them. Another famous quote that continues today. Xerxes, for some reason after this, waited 4 days. There's a lot of speculation here, and the debate is basically, was he trying to wait them out, or was he just in awe of the sheer level of testicular fortitude he was about to go up against? So Leonidas is planning for his get-together, and it's a very good. You see, the main path that ran alongside this beach where the Arabs were marching at is at its widest 100 meters across, but further down it closes up, and in some places was as narrow as just 2 meters across. Adding to this was the Phocians at some point earlier had made a series of 3 hot gates whereby traffic could be strictly controlled. By diverting water from a hot water spring high up in the nearby mountains, they created a saltwater marsh that outside of a stone road going across that was only 1.5 meters wide, it was virtually impassable. Archaeologists working the area have said it's basically a quicksand-powered nightmare, and they will never be able to recover everything lost there because of this feature. If you've ever read Art of War by Sun Tzu, you'll notice one of the things he really drills on is location, location, and location. And this is the reason why. By forcing Xerxes' massive army into that tiny, tight, contorted seaside pass, their numbers were actually rendered meaningless because soldiers would have to fight literally one at a time in some locations. Day 1. So Xerxes opens up with an alpha strike of 10,000 men, and that alpha strike is almost totally lost. The secret was in the Spartan equipment. They were among the most proficient users of brass and bronze, and with iron not coming into style or even real infancy for another 500 years to a millennium, this reflected the best equipment that would have even been possible to be made at this point in human history. Even with the forecast of 100% rain of wrath, the Arab arrows just didn't have the velocity or mass to penetrate their shields. And perhaps most importantly and notably, their helmets. So with their fire support rendered an almost complete non-issue, the brunt of the attack would have to be carried out by the frontline infantry, and they were not doing any better. The initial engagement started right outside of one of the hot gates, and had ironically been reinforced by the Phocians following their last use of the area, against Xerxes' dad of all people. But by joining shields and going into an ultra-tight formation, they were able to make a giant spiked wall made out of nothing but spears and shields that was virtually impossible to move. To further handicap Xerxes' forces, they were carrying shorter armaments that were designed for room clearing, not field taking. And because of the drastic range advantage afforded by the Spartan spears, closing in wasn't even a possibility. So stuff got desperate. Masses of soldiers pushing upon bodies stacked upon the Spartan spears and shields. But the Spartans weren't mere conscripts like Xerxes' people. These people were practically raised to fight from birth. Seriously, Battletech fans, compare clan society to Spartan society and tell me you don't see a similarity here and there. Anyways, they had endurance far and above what even the thousands of conscripts had. And most importantly, they knew how to use it. By keeping units together based upon their hometowns, Leonidas was keeping people that all previously trained and lived and worked together. So everyone was deeply familiar with everyone else in the unit. This helped out by the fact that as people start getting injured and fatigued, this would be intrinsically recognized, and squad mates would rush in to rotate out injured and tiring soldiers without even needing to be told. According to observers, one of whom was named Ctesias, the first wave of Mede soldiers, who were the basic conscripts, were quote-unquote cut to ribbons. That is apparently where that term came from, folks. Yes. He also added that the Spartans only took a loss of 2, maybe 3 soldiers. Xerxes actually came out to watch the battle, and after standing up 3 times hoping that would be the breakthrough, retired to his ship to reassess his situation. He came out an hour later and issued orders to send the Immortals to the front lines. The Immortals were Xerxes' most experienced and decorated unit, so they reflected his best in training, experience, and equipment. But the Spartans had something special just for them. As the Immortals closed in on approach, the Spartans started to break ranks and run. This is another reason why I think they actually read sun-tzu. As the Immortals started to throttle up, giving chase, the Spartans regrouped into formation almost seemingly instantly, and the Immortals practically impaled themselves. Their first waves were outright losses, and each subsequent wave just encountered the exact same set of catastrophic circumstances the conscripts were given. Xerxes ordered the remaining Immortals to withdraw, and camp was stayed overnight. Day 2. The second day largely started out the same way as the first. Xerxes literally just wasting people, crashing them upon the Spartan shields and spears like waves of water onto the cliffside rocks. It was almost another day of total loss for Xerxes. Progress would soon be shown. Later in the evening, a local farmer named Ephialtes would seek counsel with King Xerxes, saying he had information that he hoped the king would be more than This farmer would go down in history as the entirety of Greek culture would actually edit their language, and this guy's name would become the official Greek word for nightmare in honor of his next traitorous action. Xerxes would send Ephialtes out with the second in command, General Hydornis, along with the remains of his Immortals division, to take a mountain goat path that would lead around and behind the Spartans' defensive wall. Day 2.5. So during the night, some of the Phocians that had joined the Spartans were and unfortunately already familiar with the path that the Nightmare Capellan guy was showing to Xerxes. As Xerxes' units approached the Phocians, they began taking fire. They sent a runner to relay news of its discovery and the cavalry's flanking approach. Leonidas immediately called all of his lieutenants to meet. Day 3. Leonidas has a huddle with his fellow generals and tells them they have a choice. They can leave now so they can fight later, or they can take a stand with Leonidas, who is going to stay. All in all, a force of approximately 7,000 people had lasted through 2 days of fighting, killing easily by some estimates around 3 times their own number, while suffering casualties only numbering 100 or 2 at most. It was now being divided up. 5,000 would gracefully exit before Xerxes' arrival to prepare more defensive legions. The rest of them, numbering somewhere between 15 and 1,800, would, along with General Thermopylae, stand right alongside Leonidas and go down in history for what would arguably be one of the most successful belaying actions ever fought. Against another wave of 10,000 soldiers, the immortals dispersed within, Xerxes' forces charged the last remaining defensive position of the beach, and oddly enough, the Greeks charged it too. Moving the fight to more open ground where they had better freedom of movement. After the two forces were engaged, Xerxes ordered all of his fire support to the immediate line, forcing the Greeks to withdraw in hopes of finding cover. According to the observer Herodotus, Xerxes' property dispute cost him over 9 days, 20,000 men, and would guarantee the defending Greek forces an advantage of time and distance in their further preparation that would ultimately prove to be impossible for Xerxes and the Arab Empire to overcome. The cost for this was roughly 2,000 of what had to be easily the bravest and fiercest soldiers to have ever worn the uniform of any country. These warriors genuinely reflected upheld bars for extraordinary service and King Leonidas' last message really drives it home. Translated, it comes out to something a lot like, "O stranger, please tell the Lacedaemonians that we lie here, obedient to our law." You see, there was an actual law in Spartan society forbidding retreat, ever. So in retrospect, it's really uncertain what exactly motivated Leonidas. There's some suspicion that he was on a martyrdom kick over what that guano crazy chick said, but one thing's for sure, she was proven absolutely dead wrong. The way this ended was a long-running battle that took over a month. Athens was taken during it, but literally only momentarily. All this culminated in the Battle of Salamis. Yes, salamis, like the lunch meat. It's apparently named after where it comes from, so continuing on. The Greek navy was able to bait Xerxes' navy into a really tight area around the island. I wonder if they used salami. Anyway, they managed to surround them and decimated his navy. Fearing the possibility of being stuck in the Mediterranean forever, Xerxes ordered his forces to pack it up and go back the way they came from, but by land. Yeah, he had to roof it. A walk of shame that was probably a year of his life he would never let down. Scholars actually apparently love to debate who the real winner was here. I think the majority of reasonable military minds looking at the sum total of the conflict would agree that it was actually a Greek victory. Despite the temporary loss of ground and loss of manpower, which was actually unbelievably insanely low. Plus the fact that we're dealing with a time period where it can take days, if not weeks, for these units to get moved into action. This all comes together to indicate a rather clear Greek victory, especially by the aspect of you win wars by surviving them. Outliving the opposition is a very accurate definition of victory. Just ask General Patton. And with the sacrifices made by Sparta's finest, time and space was bought that allowed for both the successful evacuation of Athens and the rallying of all remaining militias together in Salamis, which altogether ended with what had to be the longest walk of shame in human history for King Xerxes. And seriously, By the way, you can leave me stranded in the Mediterranean any day. There's a lot worse places. Plus, I seriously love calamari, and my first crush was the Greek girl next door named Desiree. No lie. In 1939, archaeologists Spiridon Marinatus would uncover an irrational amount of arrowheads from a small hill leading off the beach. The hill was named Kolonos Hill, and it is recognized as the official final resting ground of the fabled 300. But this hallowed ground wouldn't remain peaceful for long. World War II. British Commonwealth Armed Forces versus the German Jacobites. Unfortunately, very soon after Spiridon's discovery, war would return to its fabled past. After taking successive losses at Mount Olympus and Serbia, which is next door to Serbia, just to clarify, the Commonwealth forces were split into two groups. The New Zealand 2nd Infantry Division would take the coastline, practically in the exact same spots the Spartans took. Matter of fact, on Wikipedia in the article for the World War II Battle of Thermopylae, we'll see what looks like a tank driving by a small river. That river actually is one of the rivers that helped create the hotcakes. The Australian 6th Infantry Division would post up at a nearby town called Bralos. Now, the Buddhists have a saying. I like the Buddhists. They're always calm, chill people. Time flows like a river. Thus, history will always repeat itself. The Australians managed to get reinforcements into Bralos, a full 3 brigades. The two men in charge of the divisions, Major General Ivan Mackay and Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg, had been told basically that this was it and there was no possibility of falling further back. But what neither general knew on the field was in ranks even above them, evacuation for Athens were already underway. And just like 1,500 years ago, the rally point was Salamis. The Commonwealth forces, following the Greeks' own playbook, fell back to the island of Salamis and proceeded to evacuate their forces by boat. On the 23rd of April, 1941, the New Zealand 6th Brigade and the Australian 19th Brigade, led by Brigadiers Harold Barrelclaw and George Vasey, respectively, finally came within range of the jackboot guns. The last communication command received before shots started trading was sent by Brigadier Vasey, and the message exactly was, "Here we bloody are, and here we bloody will stay." Vasey's superior, Brigadier Major A.T. Bell, would recount later that upon receiving this, he simply turned to his superiors and said to them, "They are going to hold their positions, come what may." On or about 11:30 hours on the 24th of April, the jackboot 6th Mountain Division would be reinforced by the 5th Panzer Division and would start the march down the peninsula. At the nearby town of Lamia, artillery had been set up, and it quickly went to work setting its sights up for the mountain valley leading down into the beach that is basically the battlefield of Thermopylae.